Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 250 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I am your host, Mike Eilon. I am the CEO of Greek University, a speaker, and a two-time author. Our second book is called From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing. So go and pick up that book on Amazon today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, my metabolism in high school and college was very high, and I was constantly active. As I got older, it became a little bit easier to not be as active, to not exercise, and to not have good eating habits. Luckily, I could always fall back on the exercise routines that I picked up and practiced over and over again in college with all of my fraternity brothers. And I'm grateful that they made it a part of our collective routines. It was part of our culture. So making an effort to stay fit with your brothers and sisters in college, that can pay off long term. Those habits and the accountability will help you along this journey that we call life, and you'll also build healthy relationships along the way. Our next guest is Glen Livingston, Ph.D. He is a veteran psychologist and was the longtime CEO of a multi-million-dollar consulting firm, which has serviced several Fortune 500 clients in the food industry. Glen has sold $30 million of marketing consulting services over the course of his career. You may have seen or his company's previous work, theories and research in major periodicals like the New York Times, the LA Times, the Chicago Sun-Times, the Indiana Star-Ledger, the New York Daily News, and a whole bunch of major media outlets on his page. You've also heard him on ABC, WGN, and or CBS Radio or UPN TV. Now, disillusioned by what traditional psychology had to offer overweight and or food-obsessed individuals, Dr. Livingston spent several decades researching the nature of binging and overeating via work with his own patients and a self-funded research program with more than 40,000 participants. Most important, however, was his own personal journey out of obesity and food prison to a normal, healthy weight and a much more lighthearted relationship with food. Welcome to the show, Dr. Glen Livingston.
Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
This is going to be great, Glen. As soon as I heard more about the work that you've been doing and your personal story, I said, wow, this is something that our listeners are really going to love hearing about. Now, I know it was a lifetime ago, but I have a special place in my heart for Long Island. And you decided on Stony Brook University for your undergraduate experience. So I'm just wondering, what made you choose Stony Brook of all places?
I saw you wanted to ask me that question, and I thought, because I was not the same person. Back then, I was kind of a long-haired hippie smoking pot and eating everything that wasn't nailed down, kind of like you. My metabolism was favorable, and I'm 6'4", and if I worked out a couple hours a day, I could eat whatever I wanted to. But I actually didn't pay any attention to college choices at all, despite the fact that my father has a Ph.D. from Columbia. And I got a call from the guidance counselor 2 days before I had to take the SAT. And she said, you're taking the SAT on Saturday. I'm lucky I'm smart. I did okay. And then she said, I'm applying to Stony Brook. I got into both at Delphi University, too close to home. So I wanted to actually go away. And so Stony Brook was an hour away. That's why I went to Stony Brook. And I went from a cushy house in Great Neck, Long Island to a room no bigger than this little kitchen here with two other guys and constant drinking and partying. It was a crazy experience, but it's a good school. It was a good school. But
yeah, it's a very good school. I've worked with the students there. I think that they're fantastic. But yeah, listen, I mean, not everybody has a big plan, right? Sometimes you just kind of fall into something, but clearly it worked out. It was a good foundation for the rest of your life. So
I mean, I had a plan for graduate school and my career and everything like that. So it worked out really well. But the last time someone asked me where I went to college, I can't even remember. So that's why I went to Stony Brook University. Yeah.
I reminded you that you went to Stony Brook.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny.
That's great. Now, you're the creator of Never Binge Again, which is this company that's dedicated to helping others from stopping to overeat, binge eating. Now, this book that you wrote is a top seller. It has now more than 14,000 reviews on Amazon. So tell our audience, why did you decide to start this company?
Oh boy. Well, first of all, I'm not just a doctor that works with overeaters. I had a very serious problem myself. Like I said, I wasn't nailed down. Whole pizzas, 2 of them, boxes of muffins, boxes of boxes of chocolate bars, lattes, whatever wasn't nailed down, it was fine. And I thought that was like a superpower, not really a problem. When it became a problem, when I was like 22 or 23 years old, and I was seeing patients and commuting 2 hours a day to graduate school in the Bronx, and I couldn't really let go of the food. I couldn't work out 2 hours a day anymore, much less 2 minutes a day. And I found that the food had a hold of me, like it had a life of its own. And I'd be sitting with a suicidal patient, or, with a couple that just found out about an affair, and like really high risk situations. And I'd be thinking, well, when can I get to the deli and get a whole tray of food to empty into my jaw? Or when can I get to the pizza place? And it really bothered me more than the weight, which became a problem over time. I was eventually almost 300 pounds. But more so than the weight, what bothered me was the food obsession. Like I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I couldn't really be present. And being a great psychologist was always the most important thing to me. I grew up in a family of psychologists, and there are literally 17 of them in the extended family. And I wanted to be more than an intellectual psychologist. To really get people to change, you have to lend them your soul. You have to get them to love and trust you enough to think new thoughts and take new risks and leave their comfort zone. And I just couldn't. I was thinking about food all the time. And that's what really bothered me. And I went a very traditional route to try to solve it, because I was from such a psychological background. I thought I must have a hole in my heart. And so if I could fill that hole in my heart, then I'll stop trying to fill the hole in my stomach. And I went to see the best psychologists and the best psychiatrists, and I took medication. I went to Overeaters Anonymous, did everything you could imagine. And it was a very soulful and spiritual journey. I don't regret having taken it. I learned a lot about myself. But I get a little thinner and a lot fatter, and a little thinner and a lot fatter, and a little thinner and a lot fatter. And nothing really seemed to work. And then fast forward maybe 20, 25 years, I had several experiences that combined to flip the paradigm with which I was working. You could say up until that point, I thought, well, I must have an inner wounded child and I have to nurture it back to health. After that point, I said, no, this is more like being the alpha dog of your own mind and taking control of the thoughts that talk you out of your own best thinking. And the things that talked me into that were, one, I was consulting for big food. I was doing big pharma too, but big food. And I really felt like I was on the wrong side of the war from my perspective now. But I was helping them to sell more sugar and starch. And I saw the millions, if not billions of dollars they were putting into engineering these hyperpalatable concentrations of starch and sugar and fat and oil and excitotoxins and salt. And they're all designed to hit the bliss point in your reptilian brain without giving you enough nutrition to feel satisfied. It's an addictive process. And I said, that has nothing to do with whether I'm not happy in the marriage. It has nothing to do with whether my mama didn't love me enough when I was a little boy. That's an external force that's geared towards my evolutionary responses. They want to hijack my survival drive and get me to give money to them without real regard to my health and well-being. Then I saw what was happening with advertising, and people think that advertising doesn't affect them, but it actually affects you more when you think that, because your sales resistance is down. And I saw that there's equally as much money going into advertising these products well. And there are 5,000 messages that go out every year about some type of food or another. Maybe a half dozen of them are about fruit and vegetables. So, you start to believe that you need these things. And they would do things like, there's this food bar manufacturer, when the VP told me as he was leaving the company hanging his head in shame, saying, Glenn, the most profitable thing we did was to take the vitamins out of the bar and put the money in the packaging. We made the packaging multicolored and diverse and vibrant, because in nature, you're told you're attracted to the rainbow. When you think of a salad with green lettuce and red tomatoes and blueberries and yellow carrots, you're actually attracted to that because you're getting a variety of micronutrients. And that evolutionary response can be hijacked by packaging that looks like a salad, but they actually took the vitamins out of the bar because they were too expensive and they were making it taste bad. So, and I don't even mean to single out that one manufacturer, because it goes on across the industry. I can tell you other things that happen. So that's an external force. It has nothing to do with my innards. And then finally, I read a little bit about neurophysiology, and I read an interesting alternative book on addiction called Rational Recovery, which essentially pointed out that the lizard brain, which is the seat of addiction, most addiction, it's the fight or flight response, it's the feast or famine response, it's the part of us that says, just hand over the chocolate bars and nobody gets hurt, right? That part of the brain doesn't know love. Like it's the brainstem. And when it evaluates something in the environment, it's from the perspective, do I eat it? Do I mate with it? Or do I kill it? Eat, mate, or kill. It's like a bad college drinking game. Right. And then on top of that is the mammalian brain that says, before you eat, mate, or kill that thing, what impact will that have on the people that you love, on your tribe, on your community? And then on top of that is, what impact does that have on your longer term goals? The neocortex says, before you eat, mate, or kill that thing, how is that going to impact the type of person you're trying to be in society, your spirituality, your music, your art, your contribution, your work, your dietary health and fitness goals? That's all in the neocortex, the rational brain. And so I thought, now this is really interesting. I spent 25 years trying to love myself thin, but the part of the brain which responds to food addiction doesn't know anything about love. And so maybe this is wrong. Maybe this is more like, maybe my neocortex has to be the alpha dog and say, wait a minute, not do you need a hug if you're waking up and wanting the chocolate bar, but get back in line or I'll kill you, right? Like it's an alpha dog growls and snarls and says, get back in line. And so those three things together, coupled with some insights I got from the study that I did, led me to believe that I had to take control. The same way that you would take control of your bladder or your testicles. Like if you see an attractive woman in the street, you don't go running out and kiss her. Like there are protocols and ways of doing that in a civilized society. If I had to really pee right now, which I don't, but if I did, I would tell my bladder, look, I hear you, we'll take care of it, but in my way and my time, I got to finish this talk with Michael first, right? Mm-hmm. And I say, well, why is this any different? And that paradigm shift, it kind of cleared away a lot of muck. It made me stop looking for all these deep psychological reasons and figure out what were the practical ways I could implement to disempower that emergency response. It's the sympathetic nervous system, the feast or famine mode, and empower the rational part of my brain to wake up at the moment of impulse and give me some extra microseconds to make the right decision. What I came to is, remember, I was not working with overeaters. This was not something I was going to do publicly. I was looking for the solution myself. What I came to was a little embarrassing. I almost, this was a hard part of the interview for me. I decided that I had an internal pig. I said, I have to know when this thing is waking up so I can manage it. So I decided I need a really clear line in the sand so I know what healthy eating is. So for example, the first rule I made was I will never eat chocolate on a weekday again. I'll only ever have it on a Saturday or Sunday. And then if I was in a Starbucks and I heard this little voice in my head that says, you worked out hard enough, Glenn, you're not going to gain any weight. Go ahead and have a little chocolate. It's easy to start tomorrow. I would say, wait a minute, whoa, that's not me. That's my pig squealing for pig slop. Chocolate is pig slop on a Wednesday. I don't eat pig slop, and I don't let farm animals tell me what to do. And here I am, this sophisticated psychologist with, you read my credentials. And the one thing that worked for me, it's like, I don't eat pig slop. I don't let farm animals tell me what to do. And I just kept this private for a very long time. I kept a journal. There are other pieces and parts to it. We can talk about it over time, but I would essentially keep a journal. I would write down why the pig said, I should break my rule. And then I would write down why it was wrong. So for example, if it says you worked out hard enough, then it'll be just as easy to start tomorrow. Well, the truth is that the way the brain works, the principle of neuroplasticity says what fires together, wires together. If you have a craving and then you indulge that craving is going to be stronger tomorrow. So if you're in a hole, you should stop digging. Same thing for thoughts. If you have the thought, I'll just start tomorrow, and then you indulge that, your thought, I'll just start tomorrow, is going to be stronger tomorrow. So you'd be more likely to have it tomorrow. So you really have to use the present moment to be healthy. And I kept this journal, Me versus My Pig, for about 8 years. It wasn't a miracle. It's not like everything was all better right away, but slowly but surely I came up with better ways to wake up and calm down when the pig would get active. And I found better and better rules that I, could and would follow. And slowly but surely I got thinner and healthier and less obsessed with food. And then the original question was, why did I decide to publish this book? Well, I was getting divorced in 2015. And I was a minor partner in a publishing company as a result of all the business things that I did. And the CEO said, Glenn, we really need to publish our own book so that we can prove that we know what we're doing. We want to show people we can make it popular and that we know what we're doing. I said, well, I have this crazy journal of Me versus My Pig. And he said, that's perfect. You have to do it. I turned it into a book over the summer. I sent it to him. He calls me back 2 weeks later and he says, Glenn, I don't need donuts or pig slop. I don't let farm animals tell me what to do. And he proceeds to lose almost 100 pounds. Wow. And so we published it about 6 months later. And then slowly but surely, we did all the right things to promote it. And it was a very slow build and then a bigger build. And then it really took off. And now we have over 1 million readers. And I go around telling people, I've got a pig inside me and maybe you do too. And if people see me in a bookstore, sometimes they don't really know my name, but they kind of point at me and they go, pig guy. It shouldn't work out so well for me on first dates, but it's kind of a funny thing.
Yeah, that's great. I think I'm starting to develop a little bit of that myself. People look at me and they're like, TikTok guy, right? So that's really interesting how, you kind of get known for things that you never in a million years would have ever thought that would be the case. But I mean, as you explain it, it's so fascinating to me because this is part of your personal story too, not just your professional journey, but your personal story. Is that really the Never Binge Again method, is basically empowering this rational part of your brain and journaling in order to get thinner? Is that really the method?
Yeah, but there's more to it. There's more to it. So the part of your brain that overthrows your best thinking and says just go have the chocolate bar and screw it. That's that's the lizard brain. It's an activation. It's a misfiring of the survival mechanism of the brain. And it's being taken advantage of by the people who make the chocolate bar or the Doritos or whatever it is. And I don't ask people to give that stuff up. By the way, it's possible to stop overeating without giving that stuff up. You just have to put boundaries around it. But so you make a clear rule so that you can recognize when it's active. But then what you really want to do is deactivate the sympathetic nervous system. And you can do that in a number of ways. The 2 ways that we find work best that are always available are something we call 7-11 breathing. I got that from Laurie Hammond. And if you breathe out for a count of 11 and in for a count of 7, you're going to be signaling your nervous system that there's no emergency. If you think about it, if you were being chased by a hungry bear, you would not have time to do that kind of breathing. You'd be. So this is the opposite of emergency breathing. And it just slows you down and tells your body, like, activate this other nervous system that says it's time to rest and digest and think and plan. Once you've done that, you want to write down what the pig's saying. Don't do it in your head, write it down, because writing is an upper brain activity and binging is lower brain activity. So now you've done 2 things to move the battleground from the place where your emotions and whims and impulses are supreme in the the lower brain to the parasympathetic nervous system, to your neocortex, where reason and thinking and rational choices reign supreme. So you do that, and then there's a more detailed methodology for isolating what's wrong with the pig's thinking. It's not usually enough to just say, well, what's wrong with it? You have to look at the different pieces and parts of its logic, and what would I have to believe what the pig is telling me. I'd have to believe that, chocolate was necessary. I'd have to believe that I'd be able to stop at one bite. I'd have to believe that this was the only way that I could get the relief and energy that I wanted right now. I'd have to believe that that my nervous system was not going to down regulate its pleasure response due to being overstimulated. There's a whole litany of things that will happen that you would have to believe to go along with that. And you want to more systematically examine what your pig's beliefs are, so that you can disempower it. And over time, you get better at that. Over time, you find just the right rules for you. So I don't tell anybody what to eat. I ask them, starting with one simple rule, what could and would you do? What rule could and would you follow that's not too onerous, but it would make a big difference? Like some people will say, I'll never eat after 8 o'clock at night again. Other people will say, I will only ever have bread in a restaurant, only 2 pieces, right? I knew a truck driver who had to eat 3 meals a day at fast food places. He says, I'm not going to stop doing that, but I'll tell you what, I won't go back for seconds. And you make that rule. And then all of a sudden, as soon as you make that rule, this other part of you starts trying to talk you into breaking it. And now you can observe what the game is. And so now you have this way to wake up. You say, wait a minute, that's not me. You don't have to call it a pig. I probably shouldn't have called it a pig. I probably should have called it a food demon or something like that. But you wake up and you can start to play this game where you recognize that you can take control. Most people feel powerless. Most people feel like incapable at some point in their life of taking control of those moments. But the truth is that you can. The truth is that you can. The other reason that this works is because there's a mythology in our culture that says we should eat well 90% of the time and and indulge ourselves 10% of the time. It's a good idea in theory, but there's no specific guidance for how to discern the 90% from the 10%. And so what that does is it puts you in a situation where you have to make constant food decisions all day long. Willpower is the ability to make good decisions. It's more like gas in the tank than a genetic gift. And so every time you're making a food decision, you're burning a little bit more brain glucose and wearing down your willpower. And so if you're trying to eat well by making these food decisions all day long, you're wearing down your willpower. It's really, really hard. This is why most people screw up at night. But if you say, look, I want to cut down my chocolate eating, so I'll only ever have it on the last 3 days of the calendar month. Well, now you've cut it down to 10% of the time, but you've made your decisions already. So there are a whole bunch of reasons like that why it works better. So yes, that's the Never Binge Again method. Yeah.
That's a great explanation. I really like that. Now, these food demons that are talking to you, they're not just talking to you. I mean, they're talking to, Americans all over the country here. So why do you think overeating, stress eating, binge eating, why is that so prevalent in our culture?
Well, I mean, there's the big food and big advertising industry that we talked about, which are these, we didn't have potato chips and pizza and, chocolate bars and all the things that we have today. We didn't have that on the savannah. We're not evolutionarily prepared to deal with that level of stimulation. It's a concentrated form of pleasure that doesn't exist in nature, otherwise known as a drug. It's just perfectly legal, right? So there's that. There's a mythology about how to treat it. People are told that they have a disease and that they're dealing with irresistible impulses and they need to talk to a sponsor every day and that they're, kind of like dependent little children. But there's not really a lot of evidence that says that works. It's often at parity with doing nothing or other interventions. And so that kind of confuses people. There's some people who do well with those programs, but that can confuse people and disempower their action-taking, confidence-building abilities. And then there's consumer demand. People really want these hyperpalatable foods. The more entrenched it gets, the more entrenched it gets. And it's a perfect storm. It's very, And most of our society seems to have a tacit agreement to slowly kill themselves with food. And, to eat healthy, you're looked upon mostly as a freak, right? If you want to opt out from a lot of these things, you're looked on as ruining the party or not having fun. And I don't recommend people argue for it. I don't recommend people get into these big debates about it. I recommend they just kind of quietly figure out what role they want these foods to have in their life, to define them carefully, and and then do it rather than try to preach it.
Yeah. You made this promise to yourself that you were not going to have chocolate during the week. And I'm sure there were occasions where you make this mistake, where you have a piece of chocolate on a Wednesday. So is there a way that we can quickly recover from mistakes without the self-judgment or the unnecessary guilt?
Yeah. So let's look at the psychology of winners, right? What winners do is commit with perfection and forgive themselves with dignity. Think about an Olympic archer who, by the way, misses the bullseye more often than they hit it, right? Even the best Olympic archers miss the bullseye more often than they hit it. What they do when they're aiming at the target, they don't let go of the arrow until they can actually see it entering the bullseye. They're committed with perfection. They're not thinking, maybe I'll make it, maybe I won't, I'll do the best I can. They're purging their minds of doubt and insecurity, and they're becoming one with the target. They commit with perfection, even though they know somewhere in the back of their mind that they'll probably miss more often than they hit it. If they do miss, they don't say, oh my God, I'm a pathetic archer, I might as well just shoot the rest of the arrows up in the air or at the audience, right? They make an assessment of, by how much and in what directions did I miss? How do I make an adjustment so I can aim better the next time? And they get up and do it again. They don't ignore the miss. They don't pretend like they don't miss. They don't fuzzy up the bullseye so that they don't know if it was a mistake or not. It's very clear that it was a mistake, but they don't get overly involved with the guilt or shame afterwards. They feel a little twinge of upset that they missed, oh, F, I missed, and what do I have to do? And then they get back on. The same thing if you accidentally touch a hot stove. You want to feel that pain for a second because you need to know where the hot stove is so you don't do it again. But you don't want to say, oh my God, I'm a pathetic hot stove toucher, I might as well put the rest of my hand down on the stove, which is what people will do with overeating. So perseverating on the guilt and shame is actually lizard brain activity designed to get you to feel too weak to resist the next binge. Your inner pig will beat you down so that you're not confident that you can get up and aim at the targeting because it wants you to have more. Once you recognize that, that's a really piercing insight that wipes away a lot of the perseveration on the guilt. You say, okay, this is painful. It's supposed to be painful, but I know what happened. My responsibility is to make adjustments and aim better next time. Let's get on with it. And that's the role of guilt and shame in the Never Binge Again system, is just to get your attention and get you to make the necessary adjustments. We call it turning guilt into responsibility, and then you move on.
Very helpful. Now, I think the college students who are listening right now, they'll tell you that they like fast food for two reasons. Number one, it's cheap. Number two, it's fast and they don't have a lot of time. So how can college students create their own effective food plan without breaking the bank?
Well, it's not about not eating fast food. It's really about how much and when, and that you get some salad in during the week also, and start to try to crowd out some of this. By the way, most people don't know how to shop for produce. I don't shop for produce at the supermarket. I would pay 3 times as much. I go to these little produce only stores, often run by family businesses or little couples, and there's this nice couple from Mexico, and I befriended them, and I buy in bulk, and I can get bananas down to like 28 cents, 30 cents a pound, and I can get whole cases of tomatoes or romaine lettuce or things like that at very reasonable prices. So there are ways, if you're willing to just take a little time and do a little work to learn them, that you can not spend a fortune on produce, especially these days. But I don't want you to think you have to just eat dirt and rocks and fruit and vegetables all the time. You can eat what you want to eat. It's a matter of eating by design. Sit back and think through, okay, you want to eat at McDonald's, how often per week? How much do you want to have while you're while you're at McDonald's, under what circumstances. Define the boundaries so that you're eating by design rather than eating on whim. That's the whole thing. Food addiction is really eating on whim and emotion and impulse, and recovery, much more so than giving up any particular thing, has to do with eating by design, moving those decisions to your intellect. And so you can do that whether you're a college student or an 80-year-old living on a retirement pension. You can do that.
I love it. This has been really, really helpful. Now, I do love really good food. I mean, that's one of my weaknesses as well, is great food. And you live in Pompano Beach, Florida, of all places. And,
Yeah.
I want to know, the next time that I get out to Pompano Beach and I want to eat locally, is there a particular restaurant in town that you like to hit?
There is. It's not particularly popular, but it's really good. It's an Italian place called La Perla. It's on Federal Highway, and it's not even off the beaten path. It's just not really well known for whatever reason. It's very small. It's one of those places that had a few tables with a little more space between them. It's not that expensive. They'll make you anything custom that they want to make you. It's run by this nice Italian family, and that's where I take people when they come in town.
I love it. I love those local family spots that not a lot of people know about. I think, the restaurant business has been hit so hard during the pandemic.
Oh my God.
And if nothing else, I just want to reward some of those local families that are running those restaurants and somehow keeping the lights on when it was so difficult over the last 2 years. Yeah. So that's really great. I
La Perla in Federal Highway in Pompano Beach.
La Perla. I'm going to go and check that out the next time I'm in town. I think that's fantastic. Now, for all of our listeners that really could use some of your help, some of your wisdom, where can people go to connect with you and also get a free copy of your book?
Yeah, start with the free stuff. With the free stuff. It's go to neverbingeagain.com, click the big red button and sign up for the reader bonus list. You'll get a free copy of the Kindle or the Nook or the PDF if you like. There are Audible versions and paperback versions also, but those are paid. I'll give you two more things when you do that. One is a set of full-length recorded coaching sessions so that you can hear what this is actually like in practice. I know you're probably saying, this is a weird episode. Michael, why do you have this doctor who's got a pig inside of him? It sounds like it's really harsh, or like I must be calling people a pig, but it's really anything but. And I wanted you to hear how it actually works and see people going from feeling hopeless and confused and despairing to feeling optimistic and excited and hopeful in just one session. So a set of coaching sessions, and we put together a set of food plan starter templates. So people have a lot of different dietary philosophies, and our program is diet agnostic. You can do it on any reasonably nutritious program that you want to. So we have a set of starter templates for people doing keto, people doing point counting, calorie counting, low carb. I'm a whole foods plant-based person myself. So whatever philosophy you're working with, there is most likely a set of starter templates for you. And then you adjust those rules for yourself as you go. So neverbingeagain.com. Click the big red button. We have coaching programs. I wrote 6 other books, specialty topics and things. So lots of other stuff, but you'll get led there if you just go to neverbingeagain.com and click the big red button.
I love all these different coaching plans that you have, no matter what your philosophy is, because there's literally dozens of different philosophies out there in terms of losing weight and not binge eating. So I think that's fantastic. And I think it's something that everybody can use. So go and check that out. The book, of course, is called Never Binge Again, written by Dr. Glen Livingston. Glen, what can I say? I really appreciate all this information. I think you're going to be helping thousands and thousands of young people with this conversation today.
I'm really glad.
They'll seek you out. Yeah, I think this is fantastic. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was delightful.
Yes, absolutely.
And to our listeners.
Okay. Yeah, to our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Glen, please like this. Please share this with other students on campus so that they can get the same resources and get some of the free books and free coaching and all kinds of things that he's offering. Go and check that out on his website. I think there's so much great information, and it's not going to cost you anything to just go and learn a little bit more about his methods. So thank you so much for hanging out with us today, and we hope to see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. We will see you next time.